And let me just get you to the list. And here's Deborah. So Deborah, thank you for joining us again. Welcome. We are very happy to have you. So
I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for accommodating my schedule. As I said, I have to go to the airport to pick up my brother. My brother has Down syndrome, so it's a little bit more like I have to be at the airport to pick up my brother. So I'm really happy today to be here to talk about nonprofit boards, both the role of nonprofit boards, and then I thought at the end we might have a conversation on how you join a nonprofit board if that's of interest to anyone. Have and let's see, we've got some people online as well or on Zoom. Have you all been on boards or are you on boards right now?
I've been on boards.
Great, thank you. Whoever just spoke, I'm going to go back to you in just one moment.
Yeah, I was saying, I was on the board for a little while with the Give Me Center in Bridgeport, but then I ended up joining the Cardinal Sheehan Center as an employee, so I left the board there, but yeah.
Because there was a conflict.
There's a little conflict.
That's exactly, and that's a good example of, a board that there are conflicts, or conflicts of interest, not conflicts. Somebody had said that they had been on a board who's on Zoom. Can you talk about it?
I was actually a friend of mine recruited me to join a board of a nonprofit in Danbury. And I stayed on until I became president of the board, and then they hired me as their director. So I was on it for quite a while.
Okay, that is very, very common. What you said in terms of a friend recruited you, very common. It's also not uncommon if you have a really strong board member and you have a leadership change to actually hire a board member as a leader. So anyone else have experience on nonprofit boards? Yvonne, so talk to us.
Plenty. I have joined many boards throughout the years, and some of them have been very good. The boards that I tend to get worried about is those ones that are not run very well. Because there's a lot of responsibility when you are on a board. So
there's a lot of responsibility when you are on a board. You're absolutely right. And boards that are not run well can really impact an organization. I will tell you the board that I thought was worst run. This was decades ago. They didn't have directors and officers insurance, which you need to have as a board. And they didn't pay the taxes to the IRS, employee taxes. And so every board member had to pay $15,000. Okay. So that just speaks to there are real responsibilities and consequences to poorly run boards. But let's just talk for a minute. What is a nonprofit? I'm just going to spend 2 seconds in this organization or on this slide. It's an organization that the IRS has said falls under a certain category, which is to further a social cause, very wide, very broad. And because you have that categorization, you get to accept donations, and people get tax advantages for giving those donations. So there is value to have what is called a 501c3. There are other 501c4s, 5s, all of that. But in order to have a nonprofit, the one thing that you need to have is a board. You might have a board and, you might be planning a program or, not have any administration, and the board plays that role, but you must have a board if you have a nonprofit. the sizes of nonprofit, I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but they range from $100,000, $50,000 up to Yale. Yale is a nonprofit. So the range is huge.
Sorry, range meaning what?
Of the revenue and expense range can be huge.
Yep.
Yes.
How can we call it like that?
Oh, okay.
So,
So, the difference between, that's great question. In fact, really, all nonprofits need to make money. Okay. But what is different between a nonprofit and a for-profit is that nonprofits, if you've got a corporation, you can take your profits and you can distribute your profits if it's a large corporation to your shareholders. If you're a nonprofit, you don't call it profit, first of all, you call it excess revenue. Okay. And what you have to do is reinvest that in your mission. So that's the difference. What do you mean? Okay, oh yeah. Okay, so this is yeah, you know, I don't know how much the president of Yale makes, but you know, certainly north of $1 million. What the way that you watch for that is you have to have compensation studies that justify your pay. You know, the president of Yale deserves to make a lot of money. Okay. They're making a lot of money and it's a huge organization. Would you go be the president of Yale for $500,000? No, you know, and so, but you have to be able to justify your compensation. That's what's important.
you haven't touched the most important fact.
Tell me what it is.
I was an auditor for Fairfield University for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
The guy who was number one did 2 things: distinguished academic credential
Mhm.
and a silver tongue to get money for all those people supporting the university. All the rest is baloney.
Okay. So
And
you,
I want you to know something else.
Mhm.
The president of Yale made $3,596,000.
So makes plenty. Okay, I will tell you. I was having lunch one day when I was head of a private foundation. And I had lunch with the president of Fairfield University, and we were talking about this. And he said 2 things to me that I'll never forget. Is number one, his job is all about raising money. Okay, that is his job. Number 2, he said something that I loved so much. He said, you know, as president of a university, we must pay attention to our A students because they are our future faculty members. But we must pay attention to our C students because they're our future trustees. And so they have to know, they have to go out and get that money. You are 100%. And it's a large part of most executive directors' jobs, you know, depending on the size of the organization. So if you look at what is a board of directors, because all nonprofits have to have boards, what they are there to do is to provide oversight to an organization. And I'm going to not say for very new organizations, it's different. Board does everything. Okay. We're not going to talk necessarily about that, but it's the board is responsible for thinking about the future, determining the vision, determining the strategies. I can't even see what my slide says. Making sure you have money, And so a board, just like a CEO or a president, also, most corporate boards, I've never served on a corporate board, but corporate boards, you actually get paid to serve, right? I say, yay. Nonprofit boards, it's the opposite. You pay to play. You have to pay to be on that board. And you're not actually, you have to support the organization financially. So that is a difference between the two. But the board, a nonprofit board, is there to provide oversight. They are the fiduciary agents, and to plan for the future. They are not there to do the work in larger organizations. And there oftentimes is confusion. So, yes.
Yeah, glad you said that, because it strikes me that there's an interesting tension in that first one, setting strategic direction.
Mhm.
Think of that as the already executive director, and the staff they already execute that strategy, and then the board is there to sort of road test it and put pressure on how consistent it is with the mission and values of the organization, but not ultimately to set it and forecast, but to be a sounding board.
So I agree with a lot of what you said. I think that there's one small difference. It is absolutely the staff's job to execute strategy, 100%. The board cannot set strategy without the executive director or president. It is a partnership, and they 100%. If you're, I have a client, and he's new at an organization, and he said the board's doing the strategic plan. I said, no, they're not. You have to be part of the strategic plan. They need your voice. They need, so you are 100%. They are not setting strategy in a bubble, but and strategy, I don't mean, the day-to-day strategy, I mean the larger strategy. So but you're right in 100% in terms of execution. So if you look at what are effective boards, what do they look like right now? Number one, they need to be diverse. Now, diverse in many ways. They need, certainly racially diverse, gender diverse, but they have to, just as importantly, be diverse in terms of skills, in terms of even life experiences. Really great boards have people with lived experience on their board. And so they're not just thinking about, what they should be doing for the people that they are serving, but they have people who have been there. And that makes a huge difference. And what I hear a lot from boards when we talk about that is they say, well, that's really hard. Yep, it's hard. So what? A lot of things are hard. You just can't say we're not going to do it because they're hard. You have to have people who believe and love the mission. And if you are asked to serve on a board, and you don't love the mission, don't do it. You're not giving your best you to it. And so you can all serve on boards, but it has to be something that speaks to you. Boards take time. Make sure you understand the expectation of time, what you will be expected to do, and make sure it jives with what you are able to do. Commitment to personal giving. Now, there are boards that have give or gets. Now, give or gets, if you're at the, I don't know, the Museum of Modern Art, maybe that give or get is $2 million. Okay, I don't know, but it's a lot. And so that certainly impacts who is serving on that board. but I think I think a good way to do it is say, you need to give a meaningful gift, given your circumstances, and we want to be one of the top two uh organizations that you support. And then you have to have a real vision for the future. You need to be focused on what can be for that organization, not just what is right now. Any questions? Yes.
I think I was gonna choose the most important here. I would say the second one. Because I think that if the board is interested in the mission, they're gonna do anything
They're gonna do what they have to do.
what they have to do.
That's, yeah,
Sometimes, there's a good people come along and they're not even interested in the mission or what.
yeah. I probably should have number 2 be number 1 on this slide, because you're right, it foundationally, that needs to be at the top. Yeah,
It's a mix of number 1 and number 2. Because it's
Mhm.
not committed or number 1, number 2 is all.
that's right. I would say that it is number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
Right.
But I agree. I actually agree. And for my next, when I do this again, I'm going to put commitment to mission as number 1. And I will think of you when I put commitment to mission as number 1. But I will, because I do think you want that to be there. And some of you, I served on one board that I went in and I loved the organization. But once I got there, I'm like, this isn't feeding my soul. And so I got off the board, because I needed something that really spoke more to me.
Yeah, I think too that a lot of times people who serve on a board are in a very different, have very different background and lived experience than the people they're serving, or that the nonprofit is serving.
Mhm.
And when it comes to the vision leadership, I think the big part of that has to be, trying to better understand the board member, the lived experience of the people that you're serving, and make that be the vision, and at least a portion of that be about, how do you empower those people.
And I have one simple word to respond to that. Amen. Okay. You do, and it is your job as a board member to find ways and board members can volunteer. When they're volunteering, they're not volunteering as board members, they're volunteering as volunteers. And but I believe if you can talk to people, if you can, one of the things I used to do, I was chaired the board at Liberation Programs for a long time, and I used to go serve Christmas dinner down at their inpatient in Stanford. And it was kind of funny because the first time I did it, the CEO was there too. And I said, okay, give me a spoon and I'll serve dinner. And he said, no, Deborah, go sit at the table with the guys and talk to them. And I'm like, oh, but it's so much easier to, sprain out the potatoes and no stress. And just doing that in my life has been life changing. So I agree with you.
May I make a little comment on board and dedication and commitment to the cause? Some nonprofits will recruit any board member that walks and is alive. Other nonprofits have a very good system to interview their possible board members to make sure that they are connected to the cause. Because different people have different reasons to join boards. And some people are not necessarily about the cause, it may be about the people that they may meet, the connections that they may make.
You're absolutely right. I think that there are also people that, you need to interview people. First of all, you need to know what you're looking for in terms of skills. Okay, just don't bring anyone on. Number two, you need to interview them and really figure out why. And I was talking to a guy, he was on the board, and we were having coffee one day, and I sat there and I'm like, this guy is one of the most unethical people I've ever spoken to. And I was chairing the board, and I'm like, we have to figure a way to exit him because he could do real damage. And so selection is really, really important. It's important for many reasons, but it's important reputationally. So this is one of my favorite slides because I think I talk all the time about flying at the right altitude. And boards need to know what their job is and what their job is not. And their job is not managing staff. They have one staff member, it's the executive director. And by the way, you can have these, if you distribute these at the PowerPoint deck afterwards, everyone can get it. But you need to understand the difference between the board and the CEO. You need to make sure that when you are talking about having a diverse board, it's incredibly important to have people who think differently. And so, and allow those differences of opinions into the boardroom, because the goal is to come to the best decision, not the easiest decision. Everyone loves it when the decisions are easy because everyone agrees on everything. And I hear this sometimes, and I always say, really, you guys agree on any, who's not talking then, So I think that that's very important. Number three is consensus, that you make decisions collectively. It's a democracy, the majority rules, but here's what's super important. You as a board disagree in private and you unite in public. You might have voted no on something, but the decision was made and you respect the decision of the whole. And you go out there and you say, this is what we're doing. This is what the board has decided. You don't have to say, I'm so excited about it, but you also don't say, but I voted against it. You do. And I just think, you can imagine I have strong opinions about that. And then I think the last is clarity. You need to know what you need on that board. And it is really, really hard to fill boards right now because it is a commitment. I think that if you look at younger people, let's say people under, 45, you want them on your board. They may not be at their highest earning potential. You want them to be on your board because when they are, they are going to be very committed to you. And so I think what is happening with boards is they have to change to meet the needs and desires of the people they want on that board. And younger board members want a couple of things. They want to focus on the big stuff. And some like to plan parties too. I don't talk about that because that is not me. And they want to meet less. They don't want to meet every month. Because if you're really focusing on the big stuff, do things change that much in a month that you need to meet? So if you look at the board's most essential, I can't even read on that, so I have to look at here. You can see the responsibilities are strategy and direction, leadership, resources, and advocacy. One of the most important things as a board will do is select, support, and evaluate your CEO. Smart organizations see their CEO, whatever you call that person, as their partner. Board members come and go. CEOs stay longer. I'm pointing at Julia because we actually placed Julia in her job. And so, but it's really important, that partnership and relationship with your CEO. And then the last one is you need to monitor how things are going. You need to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. The programs are having the impact that you intended. And if they're not, you have to figure out what you need to do differently. And then the other thing I will just say is a board is a self-perpetuating body. That means you build your next board. Who your next board members come from your current board members, usually, not 100%. So board composition is incredibly important. Yes, Julia.
I just want to say something about that. You're talking about what a challenge it is. And I think it is if it comes from the board, people tend to pull in people like them. So like to break out of that, and even in my experience, and when I try to bring in somebody from like a really different kind of environment, unless they're really nurtured, they don't stay.
Okay.
Sometimes I try to bring in 2 at a time, so it's sort of like 2 newbies, because it is a culture.
You are 100% right. To bring new people in, especially people who, are not in that little circle, there are a couple of things that you really should do. Number one, you need to orient them well to the organization. Number two, put them on a committee quickly. And number three, link them with a mentor, with one caveat. Everyone loves talking about board mentors, but nobody knows what that means. So you need to say, Deborah, I want you to be a mentor to Yvonne. That means after her first board meeting, call her. 3 months later, go have coffee with her or whatever. But be very clear of what the points of contacts and the expectations are with mentoring. Yes.
Yeah, very quick. How many members of board you have to say you have a strong board? Because I have 20.
Okay. So there are 2 questions that I am asked probably 5 times a week. That is one of them. And the other question I'm asked all the time is, how do you get board members to read their board packets? I have no idea about how to answer number 2, but I'm going to answer yours. Because I was asked so much about it, I did research on it. If you pin me to the wall and say, pick a number, that number is 15. Okay. But that doesn't mean, you have to look at the context of your organization. If you have a board that is 50 people, God bless you, first of all. Second of all, what is going to happen is you are going to have an executive committee who is the de facto board, and then the rest of the board is just brought in, and I've seen, the organizations that I know that have very large boards have those large boards because there is social capital for the people who are on that board. And so you bring people in who can bring you resources, and you don't make them do a lot of work. Okay. That's fine, but you have a strong executive committee. I think if you have a really small board, it's hard. It's hard to engage other people into that board. But I would say, 15 is supposed to be a special number, but the context of the organization.
How long do you think a person should serve with that board?
Okay.
We from ask without forever.
Right.
The fruit, very respectful is, because sometimes you have 15, but for the 15, there's 7 that are really engaged,
Yeah.
but then the other ones have been there for 25 years and they're already retired, some of them, and they're there because they love the mission, but they're not into that anymore.
There, so again, I am a supporter of term limits. There are organizations who do not have term limits, and I understand why. But I still err on the side of term limits. Usually where it goes is board terms are usually either 2 or 3 years. Okay, and you can serve 2 or 3 terms. So if if you've got a 3-year term and 3 term limits, then you can serve 9 years. It's a little long, but it's not bad. But so I would say 6 to 9 years is usually the max of what people can serve. And then you go off for a year and you come back on if you want to. I don't think that's a good idea to do, but any other question?
Who oversees it? Sites,
Okay. Well, okay.
Looking that up.
Okay, so let me in a funny way, nobody. Okay, they not so funny a way. If something is really egregious, the state or the IRS can come in. The IRS can pull your 501c3. It doesn't happen that often, perhaps doesn't happen often enough. That's correct. That's correct. The other monitor a little bit is your accountant. Yes, right?
And I was at Fairfield University in the board of directors
Mhm.
for the partner of Price Waterhouse.
Mhm.
That 19 years later, became the national director of Price Waterhouse worldwide. Kenneth Dunn,
Mhm.
he opened it to call me Shorty, because he's 6'4" and 5'7". Shorty, remember, he always said. At the beginning, I thought that was reference to something.
Right.
Finally, for 5 years. And after that, getting out, I said, I am not planning to be there 5 years.
Yeah.
He said, but wherever you go, 5 years should be the time.
In terms of staff?
No, in terms of serving of the board,
Oh, yeah. Board
because he says
service.
companies, whether they are for profit or not for profit, they change.
Yeah.
And if you continue with the board of directors who do not really enjoy the mission of the company, so you need to get people who reasonably are interested in being here and in the well-being of the institution.
Yes.
In this case was Fairfield University.
Yep.
And I thought that it was, at the time went by, absolutely correct.
Yep. I think that having new blood come in, making sure people don't get too tired, because then you get too tired, you get complacent, so I get it. I very much get it. Okay, I'm going to go on unless there are any other questions. So you can see, boards need to be diverse. We've talked about that a little bit. They need to be inclusive. And what that really means is that you can both be yourself, you can bring disagreements, your thoughts to the group and feel free to share them. I think another thing in terms of inclusivity is boards who you welcome new people. It's not a closed club. And that's very important. And then it is make sure you are equity focused. We talked about having people with lived experience in your on your board. you have to, and I tell this story and it happened in 2016. Beautiful organization, I'm not going to name it. Beautiful organization, serving people, lower income people going through very difficult times. And I'm at a dinner party one time, and the board chair came up, the former board chair of that place came up and sat down next to me after dinner. And he said, I'm so sick of people talking about diversity and equity in boards. I want a board full of rich white men. Okay. Yeah. And I gotta tell you something. He said how a lot of people act. And, people don't like talking about equity. They don't like talking about diversity. But it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It's an uncomfortable topic, especially if you're in the majority. But you still have to do it. And because it makes the organization stronger. And it's about the organization. Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if boards could consider, nonprofits consider having their board, be difficult for recruit one. But one comprised of people who might have the connections to help bring money, and maybe the skills to help with financial oversight and things like that. And another board that has people whose lived experience is a little closer to that of a certain community to help the CEO with setting strategy and overseeing staff performance.
So there are organizations who do something, they have leadership councils or stuff like that. I think that what has to be, and one of the things I said, I liked what you said about the group with lived experience being part of the strategy setting. They have to be part of the decision making. The moneyed people don't necessarily need to be part of decision making. You need diversity in decision making. That's what's really, really important.
I mean, there has been a trend to have foundation boards. That's like a whole nother, which is essentially that, where you have like a fundraising board with these the foundation board and.
Kind of, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't always.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It works best for bigger organizations.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse too much. But if you look at the thing I think that is I want to point out is the micromanaging and the micro governing. Everyone knows what micromanaging is. You as a board need to stay in your lane. Okay, you are not managing the organization. You are not managing staff. You don't need to go in and say, Yvonne, I think you need to. No, that's not my job. That is the CEO's job. So micromanaging, but here's another issue that is just as prevalent, and that is micro governing. That the board, the CEO actually does everything. The CEO actually manages the board. They do all the work. They make it super easy because, but the board is not doing their due diligence. I have an example of that is playing out right now in a CEO who built a board and purposefully, he would not say this, but I've been involved in this organization, purposefully built a weak board because he was stronger because of it. And then the board revolted and fired him. But you have no CEO and a weak board. And it's a shit show. Okay. Yes.
I've been on several boards and I'm sorry I'm so late. When and if the CEO or executive director may not handle personnel well, if there's some examples. One way not to be considered as micromanaging is to have that board have a personnel committee where personnel issues can be discussed. I really.
Look at me.
Right?
That is trying to legitimize what a board should not be doing. Okay, you know, if now, what you are saying, there needs to be, there avenues need to exist where if there are issues, and especially if there are issues with the CEO, there need to be avenues to address those 100%.
Would that be an executive committee?
Usually it's an executive committee.
But were you talking about personnel issues from the composition of the board or personnel issues on the staff? Because I think you may be pushing that on the staff.
That part, you're right.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the key roles of the board is to make sure that the policies that are within the organization are complete in line. So when situations like that happen, there is a whistleblower policy.
There's that's
Exactly. There is a way for the organization to raise a flag without necessarily having to skip the executive director and go to the board directly.
yeah.
So those policies are super important.
Yes.
So, you know, if there's a board member that's either disruptive or not engaged, then make other members of the board, particularly on the executive committee, doing something about that, not just leaving it to the CEO.
And that is yes, you're right. And thank you for bringing that up because I was assuming she was talking about staff, but if it's board, yes, then that is board. Board needs to monitor itself.
Well, it sounds like you're right too, right? I was talking about that.
Yeah, but I also, for instance, if board issues come up, there has to be a way to make sure that personalities don't get in the way of fairness and equity. Because I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
So, some kind of people policies will have policy.
So the policies, yes, you need clear policies for a board, your rules of engagement or your bylaws. And those are super important. But even doing like a training like this today, it's so easy. Okay, and then you get into a boardroom and it's like you have personalities. This is like great. And so but I think that the role of the board chair is very important. Yes.
I don't know if I'm asking a question or just making a statement, but I do agree that a board shouldn't micromanage. But I also feel like a board that doesn't ever step into the organization, see the programs running, show their face, where the work is happening. And I don't mean like a volunteer on a volunteer day. I mean like a daily basis. And I don't mean every day, but I mean actually really to understand what the operations of the organization, what's happening every day. I feel like they should do that. So I mean, do you agree that at least at some periodically the board members should?
I think that there definitely need to be opportunities. I think, but one of the things that as you can imagine, I'm a big proponent of board trainings. And so boards understanding that, it just gets tricky. And here's the deal. 80% of board members totally get it. Okay. 20% of board members don't get it at all. I had a board chair call me recently and she said, she's a new board chair. I went and I talked to the staff, talked to all the staff. I'm like, okay. And I gave them my phone number. And they're calling me.
That's why you can.
What? Okay, that was a dumb thing to do. And I said, you have one employee who should have your number on speed dial, and that's your CEO. You open that door, now you have to figure out how to close it. And it's hard, but most board members do well, but they do need opportunities to see the programs. Absolutely. Okay, I think, and this is my last. Oh yeah, that's my last one. Okay, so there are 3 fiduciary responsibilities. They're called duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of responsibility. Duty of care means you need to understand what this organization does. You need to understand what you're voting on. The lowest form of duty of care. Look, the most basic thing that you need to do that people don't do is read your board packets. Okay, back to that. Okay. Duty of loyalty is you must, when you were in that boardroom, you put the organization's best interest above your own. Now, what's important is there are conflicts of interests in the boards oftentimes are made up of community members. And so you're going to have conflicts. And I'll give you an example in a minute. It's not that you're not going to have them. It's that you are going to say you have them. You are going to identify them, and then you are going to recuse yourself from conversations and votes that relate to them. Here's an example of duty of loyalty. When I was at Liberation Programs, we had a building not far from Norwalk Hospital. We didn't know whether we were going to sell the building or develop the building. Those were our 2 choices. So I went home, chatting with my husband, and I told him, and he said, I'll buy that building because he does real estate development. He goes, I'll buy it. Okay, that all of a sudden, gave me a conflict of interest that I had to say, I cannot be part of the conversations. And that's what you have to do. It wasn't hard. And I didn't say because John will, because that puts something in people's minds. And they didn't sell the building, they developed the building, but you have to just be able to say that. And then the third is your duty of responsibility. You're responsible to your funders. You're responsible to government agencies. You are responsible to following your bylaws. I never quite understand why organizations don't follow their bylaws, because who develops the bylaws? They do. Okay? And so they develop and then say, eh. So that is the bottom line, the most basic. Yes.
So interesting, what I said about, what you said about conflict of interest, that you don't have to state what the conflict is.
I didn't say what the conflict was. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense. That maybe, putting it out there already gives it like.
It taints people, because then they can say, well, John can buy it, and then we'll have this much money we already know, so we don't have to put it on, so yeah. Yes. No, I discussed it with my husband. Yeah. Yeah.
Still talking about it, but can't be in the room where he goes to talk.
I can't be in the room when the board makes the decision whether to sell or develop. Yep, that's what I needed to step away from.
Right, so as a board member, you have to disclose to the board if you have a conflict of interest.
Yes, you do.
That's the bottom line.
You usually write that out. That was a specific example. But you write them out if you have conflicts, what other boards that you serve on, you should identify, things like that. Okay, any questions before I literally run? I hate to do this, but.
Give an example of something slightly different.
course you can.
You know, Sacred Heart University in Flushing.
It incredibly,
You know that they expanded the university.
yeah,
They purchased the general electricity.
Yeah.
For water.
yeah,
They built a stadium and they did all the things.
yeah.
All that was done. Not by the Lord Almighty, but by a small Italian Lord called Daniel Shinto. We all know who Shinto is.
Oh, Bob Shinto.
So, Daniel Shinto is the guy defeating of the bomb.
Okay.
$47 million later, he is in the board of directors.
Mhm.
And you believe that somebody who has 9 years of education.
Oh, I'm not going down that road.
Thanks.
I know that Shinto family.
Connection.
I'm not going down that
So,
road.
Michael, I believe that everything you have said, you are 110% correct.
On that I read.
But there is some rather differences, in different institutions. That, unfortunately, in a regular organization, AT&T, JP Morgan, Bank of America,
Yeah.
will never connect.
Yep.
Okay, because there is oversight in the university. Okay. That Mother Teresa are the only one left out. All the rest, we are all in this together.
Yeah.
And then comes somebody with $47 million and build all these things for them.
And they got, yeah, listen, sometimes you pay to play. That's what that is. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not gonna really go down, but that road, but it's not, they're
I
better.
know it's not, I
Yeah,
am not looking, I'm not, at
Yeah.
my age, I cannot be that like.
right, I understand.
The reality is that I think in the case of the board, I believe that later, in most cases, and I'm really talking about regular business now,
Yeah.
there is not the emphasis that it used to be in doing the right thing. Today, the quicker way, the easiest way, the cheapest way is okay.
I think ethics are really important on boards and sometimes miss it. I'm not gonna comment on the example you gave. But I remember the guy I told you I was having coffee with who was really unethical. What he said to me was, that what he wanted to do was go to, keep your eye on the newspaper and high level executives who get arrested. Go to them for big money because, they're just sort of paying their way into heaven by supporting and I said, no, I'm not, that to me sounds. So yeah, there are dirty things that happen, but I don't want to end on a dirty note. I want to end on a good note. And thank you so much for being here today. And any other last question before I have to? Oh,
You said the slides be available for us afterwards.
We'll be sending that.
Great,
Yeah.
terrific.
Yeah. Yes.
So one way to evaluate if you want to be on a board or give money to a board is look at the 1099s, which you're supposed to be filing with this Secretary of State's office, I think.
990s, and you can look at them at Charity Navigator.
Right.
You can look at them at Guide Star. It's usually a couple of years. But yeah, we look at 990s all the time. Okay, you guys, good to see you.
Safe drive to the airport.
Oh,
Yeah.
please, no traffic.
We know that.
Stay if you can, we're gonna have a conversation afterwards, but if you need to leave, you can as well. We're gonna take a little break now.
Bye, Bonnie.
Deborah. Yes, fine. Of the law. It's fine, like, it's on out, yeah, it's great. Talk to you soon.
If you haven't had a chance to sign in yet, the sign in is over
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Hello.
hi, we're gonna be back and we'll do our discussion part of the presentation. Now, I don't expect that we're gonna be here very much longer, but I think it would be nice for us to just have a conversation about what we learned and what your thoughts are. So thank you so much for sticking around. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share the presentation, just the last slides here so that we can take it from where we left. Okay, let me see. To make sure that it's showing correctly. Hide the presenters view. We can see people at home as well and move these things out of the way. All right. So I'm personally very thankful that we had the opportunity to have Deborah with us. She is such an expert and she really dedicated her time to help us out. I'll put her picture back again. Please remember that when we send the slides, her contact is going to be in the slides. This is her email address, so you get that. But she dedicated and donated her time to do this presentation. So we are very thankful to her because she's such an expert and so well known in the nonprofit industry. But so what I want to do is to just recap what we have done so far this year regarding the presentations, because one of the things that we do every time we have a presentation is to send afterwards a survey. But since we are nearing our last last presentation, which is going to be next month, I want to make it a point to ask you to please let us know what other things you want to know about if we were to continue the presentations. We are still having conversations about that, but if we had the opportunity to come in and talk to you about other things that may interest you, please let us know what is important for you to know, because the materials, the contents we can create, investigate, research, that's not a problem. But for us, it's important to know what you want to know. So the things that we did this year, first of all, we started talking about burnout and how to watch work boundaries. By the way, for the people that haven't been to our workshops before, all the recordings are online. So Katie usually sends the link as well, so people can go to the recordings and watch the presentations. They are not as entertaining as when you are part of it live. Was taking some clips this week from the presentations, and I was like, oh my God, it's much better when we are there than when I'm watching this. I don't know if I wasn't there, I would want to watch it, but anyway. The second piece that we addressed was compassion fatigue. Just yesterday, I spoke to someone that is going through a lot of compassion fatigue, and it's very interesting to see what happens with people when they cannot see what is happening with them and how they, how they feel the world around them. So it's very important to keep an eye on that. What is the burnout? And especially for organizations and people that are doing work with others, they're helping others. So you get a lot more of that fatigue because your job is so straining, because you are trying to help people. And sometimes you may not have all the resources to help those people. So it can be very hard. Then we talk about organizational culture, importance of trust and communications, how to manage conflict management at work, how do you communicate effectively, what does it mean when you are transitioning to become a manager and what kind of considerations you should have. We also talked about how to keep your team accountable, right? And then we moved into talking about how to do good performance reviews for your staff. What are the things that you have to have into consideration? And then in the last two sessions, we had the fortune of having Deborah with us, and we went to learn about the nonprofit cycle and what nonprofits were, and also what the role of the nonprofit board was. our next session in November is going to be a BIPOC training focused on immigrant population. And what is the extra experience? Many of us are serving immigrants in our job, and we want to understand better how to culturally serve them better, what kind of considerations to have, and what are the realities of immigration, at least in this area. So it's a very good presentation to attend. Hopefully I will have a very good invited guest. I'm still confirming. But it's about how do you serve this population better, because it can be challenging, right? It can be challenging because of the resources, maybe language barriers that may exist, and many other considerations that we should have. So take a look at this and let us know what else is it that you want to know about more, so that we can build a good kind of a program for next year. So one of the reflections we usually do at the beginning of the presentations is to talk about what we have learned from before, what are your expectations for this presentation, and these are my usual questions that I ask. I think I would like to open the floor now to see whether you as a group and the people at home as well, or people that are looking at us remotely, have a specific reflections about the session of today, and what do you think about it? Challenges, you know, what is it new that you discover, or what is it that you are thinking about now that Deborah did this fantastic presentation? So I'm gonna stop the share and bring everybody else back to the screen. If you like to, please put your cameras on so we can have a nice interaction. I would love that. So anybody from the remote area that would like to contribute, tell us a little bit about their thoughts. What is it that they learned?
I'll go first.
Perfect, go ahead.
Okay, so I enjoyed Ms. Hertz's discussion, but I think what resonated more with me, and I don't know what the gentleman's name is, but he addressed the fact that sometimes you have to know when to say no. This is not my game. I don't feel filled with what the organization is heading to. And if it doesn't light your fire, then you're going to be ineffective sitting on any board. Because like they said, you're there as a volunteer, you're not paid. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Consuelo, for sharing that. Anybody would like to comment on that?
I can comment on that. You know, it's Consuelo and actually I think it's more like an eye-opening, the whole conversation, because we're here trying to make a difference, especially when we're sitting on a board or we're talking to the board's organization, that we're thinking on actually taking the organization to a place where we believe is the mission. But sometimes it's true, it gets carried away to the personal mission, and then we tend to divert the organization's mission into something that one person or two people think is the best option, instead of taking everybody's opinion on board. But then also is challenging, because sometimes if you take everybody's opinion, right, it's not that you don't want to take them, but it kind of lacks, makes the time pass by, and it feels like the organization is not moving forward. So I think there is a huge, that is really the conflict of having a board and, try to have everybody's opinion, because it's more like politics, right? It becomes politics. What can I say? What can I not say? Why I cannot say in order, and I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings, but it is always good to have somebody that is really external to the board, that is just going to come and listen to the ideas. And sometimes those people, when you have a guest coming to the board and just listen to the new idea, they're actually going to be able to help you more, because they don't really have any skin in the games, and they just say, okay, if you want to, and they see things more clearly, and I don't want to say easier, but sometimes for them it's like, oh man, this is so easy, why you guys haven't done it? And it's like, well, because internally Some people say, oh, that is only your idea. Some people say, oh, that is only their idea. They're going to only benefit these people. They're only going to benefit that people. But sometimes we really need to just get the what I'm talking about, projects and what I want to do is like, we as an organization, yes, especially nonprofits, we may not target everybody that is in that mission, but maybe we target one specific group and another specific group and another specific group. So sometimes it's like we think that is going to be good for everybody, but in reality, it's only good for certain people. And sometimes that's okay. It is okay if it is, because, we have a huge community and we're helping only 1% of that community. Sometimes that's enough, but I think the challenge really is to hear everybody's opinion and kind of take direction and the steps to actually make it happen. Because if we don't make it happen and we don't take action, years could pass by, and then it's just a waste of money to keep the organization going. It's not really moving forward. We're staying behind, and then that really brings the organization to be non-working. So I think it's really interesting to hear everybody's idea, but just is challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging to organize a group of people who, by the way, are volunteers and are spending their free time into doing this kind of work, right? So they have also other priorities in life, and that's, what usually happens when they don't read the board packages. But I want to comment on two things you said, Sayed. One of the things that we have to kind of like keep in mind as, let's say, human nature, right? And I don't know if this is a saying in English or in Spanish, and I'm not even going to say it correctly, but when you have a hammer and that's the only tool you have, you use the hammer for everything. So what's going to happen when you have board of directors? You're going to have people with a skills that are going to use that skill and apply it for a lot of the things that they are giving opinions on. So one of the challenges that you may be facing, right, is that you may have board members that know about something specifically, and when you are talking about programs and the things that you want to do, they are correlating everything to your knowledge, their knowledge base, and what they are stronger about. So that's where the cooperation and the conversation, the open conversation, is so important, because we all tend to use our own experiences as humans and what we know about us to focus on an issue or something that needs to get resolved. The other thing about boards and organization in general is that, and I know this is not easy, but when we have boards and many people have different ideas, we have only a limited knowledge of what is it that we want to accomplish or what people we are serving need. The best way to know what to do as an organization is to ask the people that you're serving. The people at the board may come with privileges that the people we are serving don't have. So their vision on how to resolve things or make things better or come up with a brilliant idea about something we should be doing is based on their own experience. So it's so important to have people at the table, whether it's focus groups, whether it's surveys, whether it is having a representative from the community you serve to come in and give the organization and the board of directors that perspective. Yes, I love your idea, but actually in our community, that doesn't really work for us. And that's, not easy to accomplish, but it is attainable if the organization and the board of directors have and understand that focus. First, let's learn from the people we are serving, because we are here to serve them and serve their needs, not what we think their needs are. Carol, do you want to offer a comment?
Yeah, I found this very interesting. My background is with union work, and also right now, having retired, I sit on a board that has become increasingly dysfunctional. And so everything that came up in that respect was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. The problem becomes then, of course, you have this dysfunctional board. What do you do to fix it? And that's hard, other than remove people, but that's done we can't do that ourselves. It's done by our charge conference. So it's been, you know, we've been pulling our hair out because it's just been really, really difficult. You know, and I can see now what a lot of the pitfalls were that were not done at the beginning.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that experience. Working with dysfunctional boards is very difficult. Also, you know, working with dysfunctional teams is difficult, right? So I personally think that in that case, when you setting the stage right for your board of directors is key. That's why board of directors have different committees. One of their most important committees is governance. And governance makes sure that everything that is fiduciary to the organization, policies, finances, getting new board members are done in a way that is ethical and also at the same time in a way that is in alignment with the organization's mission. Then we have other boards because people, other committees because people have a strength. So there is the fundraising committee, right? They are in charge of making sure we are fundraising the money we need. And then there are others, educational, there may be some that are about programs and get to learn more about programs and so on. But basically, a nonprofit should have a line of different documents and guidelines that they use to work. And a governance committee and the executive committee are the ones that is in charge of making sure that the board doesn't become dysfunctional, because everybody understands what the rules are and how do we work as an organization, and the fact that we should be aligned. So if you don't have a strong board chair, that, you know, boards may become very dysfunctional, because you do need a leader at the top, making sure that everybody else is doing part of their job. Anything else? Lisa, Flor, and I think, yes, Lisa and Flor haven't commented yet. You don't have to, but if you have anything you would like to share, it will be great. How about here in the room? Anybody that wants to make any comments, contribute to the conversation? We all know a little bit about things, so maybe there is some knowledge that you want to share as well.
I thought what Deborah said about the fiduciary duties that you undertake at the board, was an important and sobering consideration for board members as well. Particularly if you're having kind of dynamic in your board that's dysfunctional, that also means it's mentally ineffective. And an effective board is not only risky for the organization, its ability to execute mission, but it's also potentially, risky to the individual board member. There's a liability that they undertake when they're previously on board.
Yes.
I think it's a big thing that, and that board tech arise to keep it, in the back of your mind, you have a real duty of care, or you shouldn't be on board.
Yes, absolutely. Bylaws, right, are the main document that tells us about what the organization does and how it functions and what kind of term limits there should be and what kind of committees we will have. They are the most important document for a board member to understand. If you ever think about joining a board, take a look at that. Before even joining, you can ask for the bylaws. It's public records anyway. And so you can take a look and say, okay, I think I'm willing to make this commitment and make sure that these kind of things are observed.
Well, I think it's important to look at them on an ongoing basis too, right? Because, a lot of will go to like financial policies and procedures or how the board makes those decisions. And in the moment, it's easy to forget that you have bylaws and, make a decision or make it at the wrong level. Sometimes they'll spell out that it's got to start, in this committee before it comes to the executive committee and before it comes to the full board. You either need to change the bylaw or you need to abide by it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mostly you got to be aware of it. I think often it's easy to read it when you first come on the board and then forget about, when you're actually making a decision, executing the work for you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes,
A couple of the boards I've been on have advisory boards or advisory committees. Comprised of either people that have a very specific focus. Or they really could not serve on the board because of time constraints, but they had special skills that when the board wanted to include them, they could. Is that, it seems like they're very loosey-goosey, the ones that I've learned about. What are your thoughts about advisory committees to it?
mhm. Usually, boards, or organizations decide to have an advisory committee when they have a specific project that they want to get through and they don't have the expertise in the board, but not necessarily need to have, the commitment of that person for 2 years. That's a good way to put an advisory committee, or if you have a strategy that you want to follow and maybe the board members, expertise is in a different area. Sometimes you bring into advisory committee people that used to be board members and want to stay involved with the organization, but now their terms have expired. But the experience they gain over the years is really helpful to the organization. Sometimes you want to have an advisory committee if you want to have certain connections in the community as well. So you recruit people that have certain area of expertise, for example, mental health or youth. Sometimes people have advisory committees as a training strategy for future board members. So people that do not have experiences in board can come to an advisory committee, serve in that, and then they can be moved on if they desire into the board of directors. It's a good testing strategy as well, because advisory committees are not as, they don't require to have that much time commitment, but when they are working and getting projects through, you can see who is actually doing things and who is actually not being responsive. So then you know what kind of board member you may get and who you may want to pitch to move into the board. So there are many reasons to have these advisory committees, and they're a good thing to have. Is another thing to manage though. And that, like Deborah was saying, those usually falls in the shoulders of the executive director, which is sandwiching between a board that may have, need a lot of attention, and then a staff that may need a lot of attention as well. So we have fire department here. That's why we are all looking out. Hopefully it's not here.
Yes.
That's not across the street.
Oh, okay. There's the police department, but they went across the street. So thank you for that question. Anything else? Do we have an executive directors here? You are. And do you have a board?
Start to create one, very interesting information today.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I do if I want to put it in one phrase is, we want people that are able to give the time, the talent and the treasure. If they can provide both the three of them, it will be wonderful, but time, we know people are busy. But there's a lot of people with talent that can give you that for the organization and the pressure, obviously.
Yes.
It's needed. But
Yeah. For many small organizations, well, the Salvation Army is around, has been around for a long time, but you have different chapters. Is that how you call them? So is the Salvation Army, is it called a chapter when every time you open a new office?
yeah, well, this one is being open, but when the officer here was moved to another place, we work as a military organization. We can move. So I live in the United States already 30 years.
Wow.
My last one, I hope. But every time you come, then you find the board. Some people left, some people didn't get along with the other CEO, and they had to start all over. And that's what we face every time we move. Or the board didn't know, what's the mission here. They just came because somebody brought them. That's why it's important that they know the mission and they're interested invest in that mission.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, every time we move to a place, we have to start from there. Where's the board? How many are left?
Mm-hmm.
We start from there.
Yes, very, very difficult to start all over again many, many times and try to guide the organization into it. Yes, I was asking because, you know, as executive directors, they usually, you know, have big jobs. That's why they get paid more than the other people. And so there is a lot of management that this person needs to have between what the board wants for the organization and what the staff wants for the organization and what the volunteers want for the organization and what the people that are serving wants for the organization. So that role is so specific, and that's why it is important to have a strong board and that you have a good group of people that you can partner with when you are an executive director so that you can continue moving the mission forward with help and no problems, right? Because sometimes relationships can be very, very, very difficult to manage. And if you're having them at the top and at the bottom, it's just, you know, very difficult work for executive directors. Yeah. Well, anybody else like to contribute in the virtual session before we go? It's almost 2:00. Our session ends up at 2:30 usually, but I think for today we have gotten enough of information, right? Anything else?
I'm new to the.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question.
Not,
Yes.
not,
In the next subject that you are talking for the next section.
Yes.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
are you? Addressing the entire issue of the immigrant coming?
No. I'm gonna inform you of what are the trends now. You know, number of immigrants we have in our community. But I will not take any particular opinion on, you know, whether people should be coming or not coming. I can tell you what are the challenges and the reasons why people are coming to the US. So we will be talking about the realities of other countries and what they're going through, what people are looking for, what they look for when they come here. And then we'll talk about trends. And, you know, what are the issues that immigrants face when they come here? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for coming. Sayed, do you want to say something before we go?
no, this class just a really eye-opening class for me especially. I need to send the recording to the rest of the board so they can actually familiarize with what we are actually living in the board meetings. So it's sometimes we don't really realize it, we don't notice it, but you just really explain it in a really good way how we are, what we're encountering. So thank you for the class, Yvonne.
Thank you. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. With November 7th.